Welcome to this episode of Crafting for Profit Live. This is episode 24 of the podcast, and today we're chatting with Chloe from 100K Artist. Her business is dedicated to helping artists and makers turn their passion into profitable careers.
So, starting as a hobbyist, Chloe discovered the power of hosting crafting workshops and quickly built a thriving six-figure business. Her journey is a testament to how creativity, strategy, and a willingness to share your craft can lead to extraordinary success. Today, Chloe is not only a workshop expert, but she is also a mentor to creatives looking to follow in her footsteps.
We have pre recorded this episode, but we're still chatting with you live as it airs on YouTube. So if you're joining us for that YouTube video, welcome and chat along with us in the live chat. If you have questions and we're not live, you can always ask those in the comment section. And if you're on the podcast, you can always drop your questions in the form, and we will link to that in the podcast notes, as well as YouTube description if you want to ask us off topic questions.
All right, so let's start today's episode with some background on how you got started with this business model, Chloe. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into hosting craft workshops?
Yes, absolutely, Corey. And thank you so much for having me as well, Corey and Angie. The way that I got into hosting workshops, it happened very, I think, organically and over like a certain period of time. It was during the COVID lockdown in New Zealand. And of course, there was a lot of people who were getting into crafts and all sorts of different things during the pandemic to keep busy. I wasn't immune to that need to keep busy and try something new and creative. And so initially I started a terrarium business and I learned how to make terrariums. But that didn't go very far. And then I quickly switched to polymer clay. And it happened because a friend of mine saw some polymer clay earrings that she liked on Etsy, I think it was, and she asked me if I could make them for her. And it's so funny that that simple occurrence was just kind of, it spiraled and then became eventually a workshop business. So I was making polymer clay earrings and I was selling them at craft fairs in New Zealand as we exited the pandemic and got back into that sort of thing. I was doing that. And then after I got a bit exhausted from craft fairs, I then sort of just decided to try something different. And at the time, I was very fortunate to have a very affordable little studio in the Christchurch city centre. So in the studio, it was also a shop, and I was trying to sell products made by other local creators. But because we were still so close to the pandemic, we didn't have any tourists, and the location was a very tourist-heavy area, and there were no tourists, and so nobody was coming into the shop, and I was really struggling to pay rent. So I was like, oh my goodness, now the pressure is on. I still have to pay weekly rent here, and no one's coming into the shop to buy things. How do I fill the space? And for some reason, I thought of trying to host workshops. I was just like, I guess getting more. By then, I'd been crafting polymer clay earrings for maybe 2 months or 3 months. And I was feeling confident, I guess. I don't know what convinced me to do it, but I was just like, okay, I'm just going to host a workshop and teach people how to make polymer clay earrings. I hosted like a tiny little workshop of 5 people. And because I was still finding my footing, I had no idea what I was doing. It was absolutely a fake it till you make it kind of situation. I had one of my friends attend the workshop as well, and she gave me some really positive feedback at the end, and she was really encouraging. She was saying, you need to do this more. You need to, host more people. You need to charge them more, because I charged like a really small amount just to take the pressure off, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't want to charge you guys a lot of money when I don't know what I'm doing. So it was very cheap at the start, and then I gradually worked my way up to eventually hosting workshops of 20 people and even 40 people once I brought on a small team of helpers. And I also introduced things like adding food and drinks to it to make it a bit of like more of an event, more of a night out that people would attend with their friends. And yeah, that's pretty much how it grew to eventually, being more like crafting parties, if you will.
That sounds super fun.
Sorry, it was really fun. Yeah, it was like it was stressful, and I was like still feeling imposter syndrome and all those sorts of things, because it's like I am a self-taught polymer clay artist. You're always going to feel a little bit unsure of what you're doing, no matter how long you've been doing it. And even now, after doing it for years, I get imposter syndrome less, obviously, because I'm now teaching a course, teaching people how to do this, but I understand where people are coming from when I see that kind of feedback a lot, where it's just like, I don't know, what why should I get to be in this position where I'm teaching people because I'm not like a professional, but that's just something that I think comes with time and that I got past. So yeah, it was a lot. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey.
I feel like the fake it till you make it is something that we all do in the beginning. So I can totally appreciate that.
I still
Yeah.
feel like I fake it these days.
I think it's so prevalent in in creative worlds, but we're all feeling it. So
Yes.
there's company in that.
All right, so let's talk about why our audience should consider getting into hosting
Mm.
craft workshops because it's such a
Hmm.
unique idea for
Yeah.
the craft business.
It's like a multifaceted reason why I think people should get into it. On the one hand, I do think that depending on where you live, it can be a really untapped market. I think that it's a really great opportunity for ambitious creatives who are kind of eager to try something different if it is something that they've never done before. Like it was something completely brand new to me, hosting events. But I just saw the opportunity because I'd seen how popular things like paint and sip were, where you go along and you do a painting and you have a glass of wine with it and you bring your friends. And that kind of thing was really popular in New Zealand and I think all over the world. But I noticed that there weren't a whole lot of crafts other than painting that were being kind of taught in that sort of environment. And I also knew that polymer clay was something that was really popular. There were so many people selling polymer clay earrings at craft fairs, and people were so interested in the polymer clay medium. I think it really like took off around that sort of time. Maybe there might have been a resurgence. I'm not too sure, but I know that as a medium, it was so popular to work with and to wear as earrings because they're so lightweight and it was just a really popular idea. And so I just thought, well, I'll just give it a go. No one else in my city was doing it at the time. And I also did try other crafts as well. So I just think it's a great opportunity to give it a go if you think of a craft or if you're specialized in a craft that, isn't really being taught in your area. And when I say taught, I mean as in like, you're giving people a fun experience. That was like the feeling that I got over and over again after doing this for years. It's that, people care about what they're making, but more than that, they care about just having fun with their friends a lot of the time. And so you're not only crafting and being creative, but you're also creating an enjoyable experience for people. And that can be really fun and rewarding in itself to be there to, facilitate this thing that makes people happy. Like, who doesn't want to make other people happy? So that's really cool too. And I think if you're the type of person who enjoys, who can enjoy people, like I'm an introvert. And so it was very out of my comfort zone, but I still really enjoy it because even though it's not something that I would normally do, it is fun to just be with people and encourage them to be creative and to see their inspiration and things like that come to life. Like that's really fun as a creative person. And I also felt that one of the reasons why I got into workshops was because, as I said previously, I was getting quite tired attending craft fairs trying to sell my earrings. I would usually break even, but it was also, I wasn't making a large profit for the time that I would spend there because when you go do a craft fair, you're there all day, sometimes all weekend. And it's quite expensive, or it's getting more and more expensive to have a vendor stall at a craft fair. And so I just wanted a different way to be able to make a bit of money as a creative person, which is such a tricky thing. It's usually you have to choose between making money and having a real job, quote unquote, or doing something that you love for the love of it. And that's just what it is. You're just crafting for the love of it. And I really wanted to flip that on its head and be like, well, no, you can have fun and you can create and you can make money. And that's what I found with craft workshops. It was really like the first time that I was actually making money off of my creative and crafty skills. So that was kind of revolutionary for me because I had tried so many different things and nothing took off the way that this did. So that was really exciting for me. And so I just love to help other people who are open to giving it a go and maybe try and experience the same success that I did.
I think it's also really good if you don't like maybe you're doing craft fairs, but you really just don't want
Mhm.
to get into selling online. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
Etsy
Yeah.
seems really complicated, or I don't want to open my own
Mhm.
shop. But you can
Yeah.
say, like, okay, like hosting craft workshops feels like the natural progression of
Mm,
maybe doing a craft fair because you already have all the stuff,
yeah.
new stuff in
Mhm.
person, right? You probably have tables,
Exactly.
you have other things that you
Yeah.
need. So I do
Mhm.
feel like, that's also a
Yeah.
good step if you don't want to sell online, which a lot of our people
Yeah.
listen to those
Mhm.
podcasts are like, ugh, I guess I have to open an Etsy shop, but you're proof that you don't
Yeah.
have to open an Etsy shop.
No, absolutely. And I think it's so great as a creative person to kind of have different streams of income and to be open to trying different things. It doesn't have to be all in one, all in the other. You can kind of dabble in things and be doing craft fairs and be doing the occasional workshops. And you can be doing it as much as you want or as little as you want. So it can be very flexible, which is good too, I think.
I'm totally encouraged that you said you're an introvert in doing this, by the way.
We are both
It's
introverts.
well, then I'm in good company then. I was just like, I feel like it's a good thing to get out there so that you know that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm out of my comfort zone here. But yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here.
So I do craft fairs as well, and I'm
Okay,
an
yeah.
I'm an introvert. But it's
Mhm.
like when I get to talk to people about my crafts or about I sell crafts that are all book themed. And
Yeah.
so anytime I get to talk to other people about books or about crafts, it's like I'm less introverted because I'm talking about something I know and something I love. And it
Mhm.
becomes a lot easier to interact with people. But if I had to go to some event where with a lawyer and a shindig, or like whatever, I'd be like such an introvert. But with this, I'm like, okay, no, it's not so bad. All right. So our third question for you is what is the first step that someone who wants to take starting their own workshops, what is the first step they need to take?
But I think that it can be different for different people depending on where you are at on your creative journey. Like if you're someone who's kind of just getting into crafts and you're dabbling and you're happy to try different things, the first step might be to decide what kind of craft you'd want to teach. If you're open to trying new things, you could try something like polymer clay or something that you know is going to be quite popular that people are already kind of familiar with, but maybe haven't dabbled in themselves and just want an environment where everything's prepared for them and they can just show up and do the thing and then leave. But maybe if you're already know what you're wanting to do and you've already like got a wee business, you don't need to start from scratch in terms of creating a brand. Then the first step could be something like, you've decided on the craft, maybe you want to go out and find a venue, and so that you've got a place in order to host the workshop. When I try and encourage people to get into this sort of thing, my best piece of advice is to just do it, really. Like, I think a lot of the time we can spend a lot of time umming and ahhing over something, especially when it's something different that we haven't done before. And it's also like if you gave it a go and then you didn't have the response that you wanted, like if you I had one person that I was mentoring who had an idea and they chose not to run paid advertising for it. They just tried to garner word of mouth, and then they weren't able to sell any tickets to it, and then kind of gave up a little bit on the idea. I'm just like, sometimes things go wrong or things don't go the way that you want to. And you just kind of, with this kind of thing, you just really have to kind of regroup and try something new. And that's something that I had to do a lot of the time. If I had a craft that was something new that I wanted to try and I wasn't able to garner interest, I would kind of just come back to brainstorming and figure something else out. So, be prepared for that kind of thing, be prepared for pivoting and figuring stuff out and just staying creative in your own process of starting a workshop business. And it also depends on, what your end goal is. Is a good first step could be figuring out what your goal is. Is it to just have a little bit of a side hustle and just do this thing on the side anytime you need a bit of extra cash? Or is your goal to actually create a fully fledged workshop business like I did, where, I'm creating a brand and I'm putting time into this and I'm expecting to grow it over the next few years. So yeah, I think figuring out your end goal can be good, but I suppose some people might not know at the start. It's really going to be so case by case. But yeah, usually, figuring out the craft, like figuring out what you're going to teach is really important, and figuring out where you're going to teach it. Are you going to do it at a professional studio or are you going to try and use a community center, things like that? So just doing your research to figure out a venue, and then also probably, checking out the market and seeing if anyone else in your area is already offering what you're offering. Because if they are, then you're going to have to figure out a point of difference or figure out, can you price it more competitively than this other person? Or do you just want to scrap that idea and think of something else? So I think those are some key points of where I would start off if I were thinking about starting this journey.
I feel like even if you started by inviting 4 or 5 of your friends for a crafting party and just
Yeah,
like
definitely.
sort of practicing on them and getting
Yeah.
feedback from them, that might be a good first
Yeah.
step. Like,
Yeah.
can you do this? Are people
No,
interested?
yeah, that's absolutely a great point, actually, because like I said, at my first workshop, I had 5 people and one of them was a friend. So it was like, it was very low stakes. It was, someone who could give me some honest feedback, someone who wanted to see me succeed as well. So it can be great to test things out on people who are in your circle who care about you because, they're going to be quite proactive. They're going to help you try and figure things out in a productive way so that, you are setting yourself up for success.
All right. So you mentioned advertising, and we want to know how you attract people to attend your workshops because
Mhm.
obviously, if we're going to do this for a business, we need people in the door. So, how do you get
Yeah.
people in the door?
Absolutely. And so the way that I would advertise is I would do my all of my advertising on Facebook and Instagram, but predominantly Facebook because it's so easy to create an event on Facebook and then advertise that. I think Facebook advertising can be really good when you're advertising something in a specific location because you can target just the people in your area and you can, of course, choose all of the characteristics and things of people who are going to relate or people who are going to be interested in what you're offering. So I would always target like people who are interested in being creative or interested in going out with friends, that kind of thing. People who were interested in things like socializing and being crafty and creative. Like I would target those kinds of people using the Facebook targeting. And what I found with advertising as well is that I think one of the strengths of hosting workshops is that it is predominantly a thing that people will attend with their friends. It's like every now and then you'll get a person, of course, who's looking to make new friends, and so they'll come maybe by themselves. But so much of the time, I would have one person come and then be tagging all of their friends and inviting all of their friends. So I think what I found worked so good about the advertising and what really helped me keep my advertising costs down was once I reached one person in a friend group, it would spread like a ripple effect to, 4, 5, 6 people, and it would grow that way. And then so I'd reach one person, but then I'd get 4 or 5 orders come in from just reaching that one person because the whole idea of it is so social. And people, particularly post pandemic, we're looking to connect with people in person. And so it just all the right pieces came together really with the idea of hosting craft workshops because it's something, like I said, it's entertaining. It's something that's meant to be fun. It's not meant to be like a stressful class, like anything rigorous. It's just like really just something enjoyable, low key, laid back. And I found that people were just so excited to do something like that on, a Friday or Saturday night with their friends.
That is really fun. I feel like it's so much easier to run Facebook ads when you have smaller targeting, like,
Mhm.
goals, right? So
Yeah,
if you're trying to run an ad for maybe, like, a whole course, then it gets a little bit more complex, but if you're like, "I have
sure.
people in my area, and I want them
Hmm.
to be creative, I want them to socialize, maybe they like
Yeah,
wine." These are the people
yeah,
we're
yeah,
advertising to,
absolutely.
that they Facebook ads
Mhm.
become a lot less intimidating at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Facebook does make it pretty easy. I was completely self taught with this. I didn't do any courses on advertising or anything like that. I just, practiced and gave it a go. And the more I did it, the better I got, which is so true of anything. Like this entire journey, it's just like I got better as I went and as I progressed.
So we're going to do our little commercial break now. We are right now just getting to the end of our sublimation craft kit. So if you haven't purchased our sublimation craft kit, you have like 2 days. You have today and tomorrow, and that's it. So we want to make sure that you guys are getting in on this. The sublimation craft kit is a bundle that we have put together with more than 15 sublimation resources from 9 of your favorite sublimation content creators. And it's worth more than $1,000.
Yeah, so even if you're getting started with sublimation, if you have been sublimating a while, I feel like we are going to have something for you within this kit. So be sure to check it out. Again, it ends on January 31st, 2025. You don't want to miss this. And when it's gone, it's gone. We do these for a very, very limited time. We did want to advertise it one more time for you YouTube viewers, for you last minute purchasers. If you haven't gotten this, be sure to get it now. And it is at sublimationcraftkit.com.
And if you are on the YouTube live right now, Angie is putting up a QR code in the corner. You can just go ahead and scan that. It's only $29. $1,000 worth of resources, $29. So you really can't beat this price. And again, this is like one time only. We're just doing this one time. So if you're looking to get it, this is a great time.
And I feel like almost any one of the resources is worth the $29, just frankly, and you are getting over 15 resources. So be sure to check out the resources. Even if you don't have like 3 of them, this is going to be an amazing deal for you. So be sure to check them out before the deal ends. And we hope you really enjoy it because we are in love with our craft kit concept.
We're getting back here into our episode with Chloe here from 100K Artist. So what can make a crafting workshop like truly memorable and unique and makes people want to come back for another workshop? Because we all know it's easier to keep a customer than to make a new customer.
Really attention to detail, making sure that they had a good time, kind of building rapport with people is really good. With hosting workshops of like around 20 people, that was my amount where I felt like I could, still be building rapport, be checking in with people one-on-one throughout the workshop, which I thought was so important because that's how I really ensured that everyone was having a good time. I was making sure that I wasn't too overwhelmed with too many people, and I was working with everybody while still kind of being able to float around the room and provide everybody with what they needed while still not getting overwhelmed with the sheer number of requests and things like that and assistance that people needed. I think that it helps to just be personable and to really be you have to be a really friendly people person with this if you genuinely enjoy people's company and things like that. I did have sometimes people help me who weren't too great a fit, and it was just like those were learning experiences for me where I was like, okay, I'm figuring out what works here and what doesn't and what people respond to. Sometimes people who attended, if they weren't too crafty a person inherently, they would get a bit overwhelmed. And so it's just like I would always be paying extra attention to those sorts of people who really needed my assistance, because some people would come in and they would just see what they're doing and just go with it and just fly through it. And it was like, okay, you're obviously good here. You're in your comfort zone. You're in your element. And so it was really the people who were struggling or who were maybe not having too good a time initially that I would pay extra attention to and just give them extra attention so that they could feel like I cared, that I wanted them to be having a good time and things like that, and that you're prepared to almost go out of your way. But it's not really, because I mean, that's what you're there for, I suppose, is to just be ensuring that people are having a good time, whatever the case may be. If they need extra materials or something, if something goes wrong, if they make something and then unfortunately it breaks or anything like that, it's just like paying extra attention and just really going above and beyond for every person, I think is a really good way to build rapport and to get them, spreading the word positively and coming back for more.
You mentioned that you sometimes do food and drink as well. That's an awesome idea. I just have a
Mhm.
random question that I've been thinking about.
Sure.
Did you have to get a liquor license to be able to serve wine?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And so obviously it's going to be different in whatever place you're hosting in. With New Zealand, the way that it works was that you'd apply for a special license, and that might be similar in the States. I would apply for like a one-off event license. The requirements of that would just be things like, I would have to check people's identification as they came in, and I would have to make sure that I was only serving, 2 or 3 drinks per person. Like there would be a stipulated amount. And then I would just ensure that people knew that that was the amount of alcohol that they would be served and that they wouldn't be served more than that. And yeah, so it was actually it was a lot simpler than I thought it would be before I tried it. I was just like, not really too sure of how to go about it, but then I just looked into it and realized that for small events, it's not like you need to, have like a bar manager or anything like that. Like it was just like very simple because I was only hosting 20 people, which is such a small event. I found that that was just such a great way to get people interested who maybe weren't in their comfort zone being crafty. Was, this is advertised as like a fun event for you and your friends, to have a glass of wine on a Friday night to decompress from the week. And people just loved that idea. They just loved the idea of coming out and being crafty and doing something that they wouldn't normally do while still getting to enjoy time with their friends and catch up over a glass of wine.
I love that. I feel like, not that I'm encouraging people to get sloshed or anything, but I feel like sometimes the nervous people, you can like take that edge off a little bit. Or like for me,
Yeah.
going into something new, because I've never made polymer clay earrings, I would be really
Mhm.
nervous about getting it right, making sure I can do it perfectly, even though I'm
Sure.
very crafty. But if you give me
Yeah.
a glass of wine, then like that kind of pressure comes off a little bit. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm more
No,
relaxed. I
absolutely.
don't worry
Yeah.
if I'm going to mess it up a little
Mhm.
bit or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to share a local place here. They do sort of a painting canvas, and once a month, they do a book themed project and they promote it to the local book clubs. And I thought that was a very cool concept. Like they have someone to market it to, and they're repeating it every month with a
Mhm.
different book themed thing. So I thought
Mm.
that was a cool idea, maybe a concept a lot of people could use for their own workshop
Mhm.
to have something that appeals to a certain group of people and repeat that with something a little bit different, like themed on a different book every month or something like that. And I feel like
Mhm.
it's kept me coming. I felt say that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Repeatability is so great when you're going from, being crafty to trying to be a crafty business person. I think that, yeah, figuring out something like that can just make your life so much easier. And that was kind of why workshops worked as well, because it was pretty repeatable. It was like, well, I can do polymer clay earrings this week and I can do something else the next week, and then I can circle back every month. So it's just like you can kind of, as long as you're willing to try and figure out new ideas of what to offer people that they're going to be interested in, you can just keep going and do seasonal things and things like that. So you can get really creative, and even thinking of a theme can be really fun. So I would team up with a friend of mine in New Zealand and do candle making workshops in winter, just because it felt so cozy and nice, and we would get like wintry kind of scents and things like that. So yeah, and doing Christmas workshops and all those sorts of things. Like it's just very fun to just like think, oh, what can I do next? What's going to be something different to keep myself entertained.
All right. So now we're going to get into it. How do you decide what to charge for these craft workshops?
That's a really good question. I think I got more confident charging people a higher amount as I went, because initially I didn't want to be overpricing people. And I think I undervalued myself and my time and my skills and my costs. So I was never losing money, but I don't think that I was charging what like at the start. I think it's quite common for people who are selling their own crafty handmade products and things. You don't want to be overcharging people. And so I think it is quite common to underprice and undervalue yourself. And so the longer that I was doing craft workshops, the more I was starting to realize, I do have to value my time. This is, it's fun, but it is very tiring. It is time consuming. It could get stressful sometimes. And there were costs that I needed to be covering. I would base it off of a lot of things. Like obviously you'd factor in all of your materials and your own costs, your advertising costs, the cost of food and drinks if you were offering those things. And then it was just like, I would think about, if I were to sell this pair of earrings at a craft fair, what would I price that as? And then think, okay, well, I'm going to be teaching people how to make two pairs of earrings at this workshop. So I'm definitely at least going to price it the cost of two pairs of earrings, and then kind of go from there. That's sort of how I would base it when I was starting out. I would just be like, what do I feel is fair for what people are going to be getting out of this experience, and just go from there.
I think as always, we also recommend people look at the area they live in, because,
Yeah.
I live in
Yeah.
a very high cost of living area and I can probably charge
Yeah.
more, but my expenses are going to be
Hmm.
higher because renting a
Yeah.
venue in my town is going to be higher than renting a venue where Angie lives.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be one of those things that it's not like all everybody should be charging this price, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Definitely. Yeah.
it's just going to really factor into where you live.
In Christchurch, when I was doing workshops there, I would charge a certain amount, and then I would travel to Auckland, which is like a bigger city in New Zealand. And that's where I would charge more, just because the cost of living is higher. And I was also factoring in things like travel costs
Yeah.
then, because when I was expanding beyond Christchurch, had all these new costs that I didn't have before that were associated with travel. So yeah, it's very case dependent, and it's going to depend on, yeah, your context of where you are.
All right. So, what are some trends you're seeing in crafting workshops right now? And then how do you stay ahead of the curve? Because we talk about this a lot, that we need to know when to adopt a trend and then when to let go of it. Because after a while, things get really
Yeah.
saturated.
Yeah.
Um, And so we want to make sure like that we're staying with the trends that are coming up.
Mhm.
And I think craft workshops can be kind of at the start of that trend. How do you find like what's trending? How do you decide, what to make?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With polymer clay, I knew that that was really popular just because I was seeing so many people making earrings at craft fairs, but nobody was teaching them at that point. I think maybe now it might, like, it is more saturated now with polymer clay earrings. So I think just being specific with what you're like, if you were, if polymer clay was something that you wanted to keep doing because it is still popular, but you wanted to set yourself apart, something like, doing floral polymer clay earrings or incorporating like pressed flowers, that kind of thing. Like, I think just taking something that you see is popular and just getting a bit more specific with it can be a good way to deal with the like oversaturated issue. Staying ahead of the trends, that's a really good question. And to be honest, it's not something like I didn't often, yeah, try and think of that specific, like that particularly. I think I was more just like, oh, what can I teach? What am I going to be good at? And then just figuring out if people are interested in that kind of thing. So, like, as I said, doing candle workshops with my friend because I had, I knew someone who was really good with candles, then just doing a Google search and seeing if anyone else was doing that. And I mean, candles are really popular now as well. And I think that there are going to be so many candle workshops now. So you're going to have the same issue, I suppose, with that as well. So I think just if you're somebody who's on social media a lot, that can probably help too, because you can see kind of what people are interested in, what people are making or attending craft fairs and things like that to see what is popular at the time. It's definitely making me think, like, how do I stay ahead of the trend? How do I figure out what people are interested in? Or, how do I make people interested in what I'm doing? I think that was usually the track that I would take was, I was interested in this particular thing. Now, how am I going to word it in my marketing so that people want to come to this? That's when advertising and marketing becomes so important because you're creating an experience that you want people to want to be there when they're reading about it. A workshop that I would do a lot and that I had a lot of success with was body positive sculpting, where we were sculpting body parts. And so that was something that was popular because it was so unique and I think is still really unique. So with my advertising for that, I could use puns and I could be funny and just like create really eye-catching, memorable advertising. I think that's going to be your friend. So just like, yeah, really thinking about, how am I going to make people really like feel like they need to be there when they're reading about this event. And that's how you're going to get people to come.
I think that with something with like polymer clay earrings and other things that you can shift like what you're actually making. So obviously you can make a lot
Hmm.
of types of polymer earrings. So
Yeah.
you can then see like what are some other things that are trending and apply them to polymer clay
Mm.
earrings. So like ghosts have been trending, this whole last
Yeah.
year. Everybody loves their cute little ghosts. You could totally make cute little
True.
ghost polymer earrings, right? And then people are like, "Oh, trendy ghosts," and like I have to make
Yeah.
them. And I've
Yeah.
been seeing in more than one location that the people, whoever the people are saying that there's a few things that are going to trend in 2025. So
Hmm.
the Renaissance is coming back.
Oh.
As well as this sort of sea siren, like deep sea, sort of Ursula like vibe, not mermaids, but
Uh-huh.
like deeper
Yeah.
blues and greens and that sort of thing as
Hmm.
well. Oh yeah. And the other one, oh shoot, there was one more. Oh, castle core. They people are saying that there's like some interesting trends that are coming up,
Yeah.
sort of things that are themed around castles. And I feel like
Mhm.
Renaissance fair core and castle core probably have some overlap.
Yeah.
But like,
True.
if these things are trending, then you can be like, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm seeing all of this siren stuff out there. We can make a pair
Mm.
of siren earrings." And it doesn't change up
Yeah.
anything that you're doing other than creating a new design for the earrings.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And as like being seasonal about it as well, incorporating the holidays, things like that, and having really kind of topical seasonal workshops can be so good as well because people, the people want to be celebrating the seasons and celebrating what's coming up. And so, yeah, there are so many ways that you can kind of tap into people's interest. Things like cottagecore, that was so popular a while back. And so there were mushrooms everywhere and things like cute, fairies and things like that. So yeah, I'm absolutely just recognizing kind of what people are into and then figuring out a new design. Like you said, it can be so easy to just kind of stay current and stay popular.
And during that trends episode with Makerflow, we also talked about hat bars are getting popular. and how you can
Oh, yeah.
transition that to different things.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
so, like, a hat bar, it kind of is a workshop, right? Because 'Cause they're making it
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah,
So, like,
absolutely.
a traveling hat bar or,
Yeah.
think about other ways to incorporate what you do into, like,
Uh-huh.
something where they make it themselves and it's a
Yeah.
workshop.
That's so funny. I was actually researching hat bar, like tracker cat bars and things like that. I was thinking of doing something like that. It is popular.
It's really popular right now. I actually went
Yeah.
to a craft fair and the gal next to me, she's like, I do craft fair sometimes. She's like, but the real money is in the hat bar. And I was like, what? What is a hat
Wow.
bar? I like didn't even know what it was at that point.
I didn't know what it was a few months ago, but
Yeah.
yeah, I went to a hair salon and they had like a hat bar event that was coming up. I was like, whoa, okay, this is good to know.
Yeah. People are clever.
Alright, so next question. What have been the biggest highs and lows of running your craft workshop business?
I think figuring out how to pivot and regroup when I had setbacks or, if I spent advertising money on an event and didn't sell enough tickets and so I had to like cancel the event, things like that definitely kind of make you pause and rethink. Things like that I would just have to regroup and take some time to figure out if this was even, if this was what I wanted to continue doing. And then if I had it in me to think of a different idea. But I mean, the new ideas always come. If I felt like that, I would take a break. And then, a few days later, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to jump on the horse again. I'm going to think of something else. And that would be the same if I had any negative feedback from people. I would just be like, okay, like that hurts my ego. I'm just going to process it and be like, okay, this is an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I'm just going to be committed to keeping on figuring out how to improve my experience so that I don't get that same complaint again. Like, I think that if you can separate your ego from what you're doing, you can just be like, every thing is an opportunity to grow, every experience and even negative experiences. And so it's funny, but I am grateful for the negative experiences. I think one of the things that comes to mind is that because workshops are so flexible, because, I'm working to my own schedule, I can work as little or as much as I want to. It's so easy to burn out. And I did definitely have a couple of burnout times where I was just so exhausted. Sometimes the days would end in tears and just completely wondering what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Staying mindful of your mental health is going to be so important. And this is something that I talk about a lot with people who are interested in getting into workshops. Like, it's so easy to just see your success and be like, I just want to keep doing this all the time and just bam, 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 and not giving yourself space and time to breathe. But just, yeah, really staying mindful of that and keeping on taking breaks. That was, yeah, one of the things that's been so important throughout this entire journey. I started this when I just had my daughter, and so she was about 6 months old when I started, and so it was something that I wanted to kind of have that wasn't just, so that I was more than just a mother at the time. I was just so desperate for something where I could, have more of my identity back as a creative person. But then the double-edged sword of that was that I was doing it so much that I was missing her. And so it's just like, you really just have to figure out what works for you. And everyone's going to be different because everyone is so different. So it's like, yeah, really just figuring out what works for you and taking breaks and all those sorts of things. I think that's what I've learned from the lows. And with the highs, I mean, it's just, that's much more fun to talk about, but it's just, being successful and like hitting that 100K milestone. And I didn't even realize that I had when I did because I wasn't really taking it super seriously. I was just like, this is something that I was doing pretty much for fun, at least at the start. I was having a good time and I was having fun with it. It was just really like nice and surprising when it was like, holy moly, like I've actually, I've hit a milestone here. I am making more money than I've ever made with any other creative endeavor. I've, tried so many different little businesses as a crafty entrepreneur and nothing's taken off like this. So that was definitely one of the highs. And then I mentioned earlier the crafting parties that we were hosting with 40 people where I brought my friends on board and taught them the ways of craft workshops. And I think those were definitely the highs as well, just like doing really big workshops with my friends and having, my friends bartend for me and serve cocktails and then also have them assisting with the crafting side of it. Like, that was just so much fun. So yeah, I think, it's something that if you have a crafty friend group, it's something that can work with multiple people or it's something that can work solo. Like, I've done it all. I've seen, both ends of the spectrum. That was really fun doing really big ones. It was quite chaotic, as you can imagine, with 40 people in a big room crafting. having cocktails. At one point, we were thinking of like, how can we expand this to make it even crazier? What else can we introduce? Like, how many different things can we introduce? Can we have, musical entertainment? Can we have live comedy? It's just like, you can get as crazy as you want with it, which is really fun too.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm so glad we talked a ton about burning yourself out. It is so common with people that run their own small business. So I'm glad you mentioned that. No matter what type of crafty business that you're starting, I feel like that's a danger because
Yeah.
you see some success and you feel like you
Mhm.
just want to put everything you have into it and you just
Absolutely.
don't stop.
Until you're dead. And then you're
Yeah.
like, what was I
Yeah. I'm
doing?
sort of like crying in the bathtub, being like, what have I done?
Yes, we've all been there.
Yeah. We've all had that moment.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, if you want to dive more into teaching craft classes, Chloe has an amazing masterclass for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your class?
Yes, definitely. So the masterclass that I've created is called On Your Way to 100K, and I created this course because I wanted a way to be able to inspire more people. I've taught my friends how to do this kind of thing, and they're enjoying it. And I just wanted to reach a wider network of people and to help them realize their dreams. If this is something you'd love to do. The way that I created the course was I incorporated everything that I have learned on my own personal journey after doing this for 3 years. And I also included everything that I wish I had known at the start. So, like all of the things that, if I could do over, I would do this differently. So, all of those little tidbits of, what I've experienced over the 3 years. So, the course contains everything from advertising basics with Facebook to things like branding and marketing. If you're new to creating a brand, there's advice on that and there's tutorials on that. It contains everything from no matter where you're starting out, there's going to be something for you. And I also include things like polymer clay advice as well, because polymer clay, I've talked about it so much in this episode. I just think it's such a go to great craft to learn if you're open to it because it's so popular and it's so easy to make it relevant, to stay trendy with it, to be seasonal with it. Like there's so many ways to have fun. And it can be so profitable as well because depending on where you're buying your materials, like it can be quite affordable, a medium. And so yeah, it just the masterclass contains like everything that you need to know really from advertising to how to create, to how to find a venue, to everything that you're going to need for your workshop and how to structure your workshops. It's what I consider an all-in-one guide to starting a successful and profitable craft workshop business.
Amazing. So if you're ready to dive in, you can learn more at link.craftingcamps.com/100K. And that's 100K. And we will have that link in the description for the YouTube video as well as in the podcast notes.
All right. This wraps up this episode of Crafting for Profit Live. Thank you so much, Chloe, for joining us and sharing all of your tips and tricks for starting a craft workshop business. I'm ready to pivot. I'm ready to go just like start a craft workshop business. It sounds actually really, really fun.
It
Um,
is so much fun. Thank
so
you
in
so much for having me.
Of course. In 2 weeks, we're going to be having Amy Pelsner from Leap of Faith Crafting on the podcast, and we're going to talk about pivoting because I think there's a lot of times where we get, going in one direction and it's just not working and we need to figure out how to pivot. So we're going to talk to Amy about that. And we'll chat with her on February 13th on YouTube. So join us for that.
So if you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We love to read them and it helps us reach more crafty entrepreneurs just like you. And if you know someone and you're like, they would be the perfect person to host crafty workshops. I don't want to do it as a business, but I think my friend really would. Text them this episode right now because they need Chloe's advice. So we hope you found today's episode helpful and inspiring, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.